From around the 1960s, when the civil rights movement took effect, anti-discriminatory laws and policies have sought to provide equal access to employment and other public benefits to those in society. This first began for people of colour, but gradually expanded and broadened to include women, people of minority sexualities and religions, and those with disabilities. And this was a laudable thing to do, because people were not hired to positions of employment, often due to personal prejudices and or negative assumptions that were made based on that person's ethnicity, gender or disability. And this was also seen in the housing sector, with landlords openly stating that while seeking tenants, they didn't want people who were of a certain ethnic group or nationality to be those tenants. So this was a good thing, because not only did it legally stamp out unreasonable prejudice per se, but it also ensured that someone who might be the best person for a particular job was actually able to even get an interview for that job in the first place, thus ensuring that productivity and excellence could be maximised and the wheels of society could turn more smoothly and effectively. Now, if things had stayed like that, that would have been great. However, for some reason, society felt that it had to keep going further to an unnecessary and counter-constructive degree. Society then felt the need to create what was referred to in the 1980s and 1990s as equal opportunities monitoring, and then more recently, as we know it now, diversity targets. As such, employers began to seek to hire people specifically on the basis of their gender, ethnicity, or sexuality. And in doing so, this then meant that in order to achieve arbitrary targets, the person who ended up with the job may then not likely to be the best person for the job, because they were hired for what they were rather than the skills that they could bring to that organisation. The truth is that there might be many reasons why people of a certain gender, ethnicity or nationality may prefer certain jobs and careers over others. The most obvious example of this is in the caring professions, where the vast majority of nurses and care workers are women. And there's a reason for this, because as the ones who give birth to children, women are on average more caring than men. Take by contrast engineering, where engineers use their visual spatial skills to construct physical structures and machines. Men, who have spent thousands if not millions of years constructing tools and buildings while their prehistoric cave-dwelling womenfolk were caring for their children, are drawn to these jobs much more so than women. I can remember, as a psychology undergraduate, the building that I attended, which included the Faculty of Psychology, also included the Faculty of Law. Whilst the overwhelming majority of psychology students were white, British, this was in the mid-1990s, so things might be different now, the vast majority of law students were from the Pakistani community. Why was that? Were there some values that attracted white British people to psychology and other values that attracted people from the Pakistani community to law? Similarly, in my profession as a mental health nurse, I have noticed that a noticeable majority of consultants, aka psychiatrists, are from the Indian community. What is it about psychiatry that attracts people from that demographic group? And finally, what I have also noticed now in the field of mental health and mental health nursing, there are a very high proportion of people from a first or possibly second generation African demographic who wish to train to become mental health nurses. In 7 years doing this job, all the other mental health nurses I've come into contact with are white British, apart from one who was Polish. No other diversity at all there. So what is it about mental health nursing that attracts people from the African continent? The point I am making is that personal choice is the biggest factor in what job or career someone wishes to pursue. Just because people of a certain gender, ethnic group or sexuality may have similar views, talents, or hold certain common values, which then makes them pursue one type of job or career over another, does not mean that it can be assumed the organisation that is recruiting them is institutionally racist, sexist or homophobic because it doesn't employ an homogeneous variety of people from different genders, races and sexualities. Moreover, because businesses have to be seen to recruit fairly because legislation compels them to. Any organisation that was clearly doing such a thing would leave itself wide open to litigation. The problem this leads to is that now we therefore live in a society where the best people for the job are not necessarily recruited because someone else is recruited in their place who ticks a box. This leads to all of us in society to suffer as we all then receive a poorer service from businesses and public sector organisations than we otherwise could have if businesses and organisations grew some balls and were wise enough and confident enough to simply employ the best person for the job. And what started out as an ethical and noble ideal has unnecessarily progressed into something that is destructive for society as a whole.